You lit up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Surf and Sales Podcast. I'm Scott Leese here with my friend Richard Harris, and we are talking to today Joy Hewitt-Carvajal, one of the ambassadors of the Sales Rebellion, who works with Dale Dupree, and current champion of the Transatlantic Throwdown Part 2, the women's edition. Congratulations on your victory, Joy, and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you. We've never had a chance to speak before, you and I, so this is a treat. I don't know if you and Richard know each other already or not. But.
No, not at all. No. It's the first time, so I'm excited for it.
So help us get to know you a little bit, Joy. Like, how did you get into sales? Where did the origin of your interest in selling come from?
Man, so it goes way back for me. Okay, so like I was born and raised in New Zealand. My family grew up on a farm, 12 acres. We had we call it a lifestyle block in New Zealand, and we had cows and sheep. And my dad, he actually broke his back when I was 18 months old. And he was also dyslexic. So like office work or anything like that was kind of not a thing that he's able to do. And so we're kind of horticulturalists as a country, if you will. Like there's a lot of, we make our own compost. If you look at anything about worm farms, like it's New Zealand, Australia, like you'll find stuff there. So my dad was into all that stuff, right? We had a lifestyle block, so we had the land to do it. And my dad made compost. Like, so literally he would like find people's tree waste and all that kind of stuff. And he'd literally make compost, let it break down in the ground, and then you bag it up and you sell it, and people would put it in their gardens. So I was 8 years old, and I vividly remember loading up the truck. I would actually bag the compost, and then I'd load the truck up with my dad, and I'd take one side of the street, he'd take the other side of the street. I'm literally knocking on people's doors saying, hey, would you like to buy some compost? It was like $5 a bag or something.
This is my favorite origin story of all time. Please continue.
And so I remember being so stoked driving home with my dad that day because I had sold as many bags, if not more than him. And I was 8, right? Like I got the fire. Like I got a taste of what it felt like. I'm selling these little old ladies, and they couldn't. It's like I was not selling Girl Guide cookies or like what do they call those? Girl Scout, right? When there wasn't no cookies, it's straight up. I was selling broken down dirt, like, and with maybe some tiger worms in it. So that was like I feel. And my school teachers would always say that I could sell ice to Eskimos, and so there was.
Now, do you remember your pitch? Do you remember what you would say if you knocked on the door and these ladies answered the door? Do you remember what you would say?
I think I would say, "Hey, we have some compost for sale. It's organic. Wanted to see if you wanted any, right? Like, real simple. Just this is what." I don't think I introduced myself at all. Like, I was just, hey, I'm here walking up and down the street with my dad selling compost. Would you like some? It's $5 a bag, right? Like,
how much do you think, if you think about it, how much do you think people were just buying because you were this cute 8-year-old kid, like out, hustling, right? Like,
right. I mean, clearly 85 at least percent, right?
Right.
Like,
I was going to say, when did your dad realize that he should stop selling and just put you full time on the payroll?
I know, right?
So did that early experience kind of sink its teeth in you then? Like, have you been entrepreneurial and a salesperson most of your life?
So to that effect, my dad did that so that he could earn some extra money for our family because we were not well off. My dad worked seasonal jobs at best. We had, there was very low income. My mom stayed at home with us because she valued family and being with us over money, but we still needed money to survive, right? And so I got to be about 12 years old, and I wanted to go to camp. There was an Easter camp that my church had put on. It cost, I think, $100 to go, but it still was a lot of extra money. And the concept of me asking my parents for that money was like, I already knew it was a no-go. So I got my friend, and we went to the local gas station, and I would get that I think I was able to use their water, their hoses, and maybe even their detergent. And I literally washed people's cars for a donation, me and my friend. And we did it every Saturday. I'd start at 8 a.m. and I'd be done by 5 or so. And there was some days we made $140 that day, but we did it enough to where I got enough money to go to camp. And then we ended up doing it like a few extra Saturdays as well, just because of like, man, this is a good way to make extra cash. I learned how to like talk to people. I learned how to redo what I was saying and get it to where they were like, got the story. Like, this is what I'm doing. Would like to know if you'd like to support us. We're asking for a donation for us to be able to wash your car. Right. So I was washing cars before doing a school fundraiser car wash was a thing. Like we just did it. I mean, we spent part of the money on like junk food at the gas station, no doubt. So they definitely profited from this whole organization. But I think it stuck with me of like, I had 3 jobs when I was in high school, and just working hard was always just something that was in me. They would put me on the cash register when I worked at a cafe because I knew how to convince people to like, I'd clear the case, right? So all the pastries and stuff in there, end of the day on a Friday, they would put me on the register and I would make sure that thing was absolutely empty by the time we're done. Just, I guess it was part of who I was, but it was all power of suggestion and me practicing how I was like talking with people. I'd know their name. They were regulars. They'd come in all the time. I'm like, Tracy, I know you need some of that key lime pie, right? Like, but with their coffee, it would taste delicious. But, I dropped out of high school to go work at a cafe because I was doing like bogus, credits in my last year because I already had university entrance. So I really didn't need to be there. My education was fine. I wanted to make money for my time.
Yeah. So tell everybody who's listening a little bit about the Sales Rebellion and what you guys do and what your role is, so people have context for, the conversation.
Sure. So Sales Rebellion is a sales training and coaching company. So we offer training for teams and individuals to help them grow in their sales walk. We focus on kind of a holistic approach to sales, that it's more than just like, what's your quota, what are your numbers, and are you hitting them? It's how are you doing mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually? Like, where are you at in life? What is maybe some mindsets of things that have happened to you in your past that are affecting your today, and how do we fix those to where you have a better tomorrow? And so we kind of come in, we help train. Obviously, we look at cadences, we look at how you're doing things, what's your routine, what's your thing, but also like, how are you and what kind of a legacy do you want to leave when you leave this earth or when you move on to something else? What kind of an impact do you want to have?
So give us some examples. That's great. And I love this stuff. I'm all about the mental health. What I'd like for people who are listening, like, what are a couple of things you run into consistently, whether it's around motivation or afraid to pick up the phone or something? And then what kind of tactics or strategies on the mental side do you encourage? Like, we all know, pick up more phone, that kind of stuff. But like, what if someone's sitting here struggling with something, what's something you see fairly common, and what advice do you give?
So sometimes people have a performance mindset that really hurts them. Maybe they played soccer as a kid and that coach was so hard on them, their parents were hard on them, and they truly felt like if they didn't truly deliver on the field or wherever it was, they weren't loved or appreciated. And so everything came out of performance, that if your grades weren't good enough, you weren't loved enough or loved, right? If you didn't hit this, then you didn't that. And so there was so much attached to that performance mindset that actually crippled them in sales, because it was when you felt that failure, when you felt that like that bump in the road, then all of a sudden you're not good enough, and you started like hurting yourself mentally as far as how you were able to focus and move forward and properly listen to what's really happening, because you've got a skewed view on what performance actually looks like, right? And so
Scott can speak to this.
I feel like she's picking on me. She specifically used soccer as a kid and all that.
I because I know Scott's mom was listening, I'll just say to Scott's mom that I've heard some of the stories, and we won't go there today, but maybe on a birthday episode for Scott, we will.
Shots fired.
So, um, but talk to me about that a little bit even further, right? So
Mm-hmm.
great. So you get someone to admit they have this challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Scott is much more this performance mindset than I am, right? I see it very differently. What kinds of things do you tell that person to say it's okay to adjust that performance mindset? Because I think that's where I really want people to understand is like, okay, it's one thing to admit it. It's another thing. Well, what can we say? What can we do? How do we encourage that at least a thought change?
Right. So I do think it varies to person because we've all got varied levels of this essential thing where we define ourselves based on our performance first on based what
Hmm.
our intentions. Um, we also judge other people often on their performance, not their intentions, right? But then we sometimes judge ourselves too heavily on our intentions and not on our performance. So
Hmm.
there's a big difference, and half the time we don't even know really what our intentions are behind why we do something, which is why intentional life and living is really important, especially in sales, right? You don't just send block things out to people and hope to get results, and then you beat yourself up and
So
think, well,
define intentional for people listening again. It sounds really good, but it's a little buzzwordy, right? How do
okay,
you?
so I would say intentional is thinking about how somebody's feeling, thinking about putting yourselves in their shoes, understanding where they're at. So when you're being intentional, you are thinking about the way that you yourself are trying to portray yourself in a way to them in the way that it would meet them where they're at. Does that
And
define it clearer for you?
yeah, that does. Dale talks a lot about that, about trying to meet people in their own headspace, right? Meet them where they're
Yep.
at. So you get to meet somebody where they're at. You get to meet Scott, and allegedly, no fingers pointed. Scott came from a very competitive driven background.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you say to someone like Scott that says, okay, look, you know, you have this performance mindset. You've set yourself up for, hey, if you're not performing, you're not good enough, or you're using that. How do you coach them to not lose the fire in the belly, right? Not to say, oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay, if you don't win, but also keep them focused. What kind of advice would you give?
So this for me comes back to, I don't know if you're familiar with David and Goliath. So David was a BA, right? The guy got like, he would kill lions and bears and tigers, anything that would try and come against like his little flock of sheep. And he was coming up against the giant Goliath. He got 5 stones. Now that he didn't get 5 stones because he thought he was going to miss one of, he was going to miss Goliath. He knew he was going to hit him. He had 5 stones because Goliath had 4 other brothers. Okay. So he thought they were coming out after him too. Now the guy's driven. He knows what he wants. He knows what he's after. He's prepared. And he goes in, he uses his sling and freaking knocks out Goliath. Then he goes over to Goliath and he takes Goliath's own sword, the sword that Goliath was going to destroy David with, and he cuts Goliath's own head off with it. Okay. So there's a big difference between looking at that sword saying that thing's trying to kill me and saying, you know what, I'm going to take that weapon that was supposed to kill me, I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to say, you know what, that's now my weapon that I get to use on the thing that wanted to kill me. So I believe that there's a massive thing to take with performance. And you can say, you know what, this wanted to take me down. It wanted to make me kind of cower to whether I was performing or not. So you can recognize I had a performance mindset and say, you know what, I can look at the bigger picture and say, all right, that sword that wanted to keep me trapped in what my accomplishments were and only whether I succeeded or not. And you can take that and say, I'm going to take that sword and I'm going to choose to let it carve out a path for myself to open up my world.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of, for me, I think performance is just one small part of a bigger picture. And when you understand the bigger picture, that no longer has the gravity anymore. It no longer seems so mountainous or so huge. So some of it's just understanding perspective and getting like that 60,000 foot view versus being so close to the situation that all you can see is whether you like succeeded or failed or not. Because when you get up high, you're looking at it and you're saying, you know what? That's a weapon I get to stand on, right? That failure is something I get to walk forward on, like I get to learn and like get to grow. And so when you start seeing failure in a new way, it's actually becomes a success. So your performance mind shifts, and now you're looking at life from a place of, wow, that failure was actually a launching post, or that became a sword for me. And I see that in a lot of different areas of our lives. We have things that happen to us in our lives that felt like there was stuff that was going to crush us, that were going to hurt us, that was going to take us out. And we get to take those things and say, you know what, those are my weapons now. Like that pain, that hurt will not be wasted. And I'm going to walk out in favor with my new weapon. Like this thing is now something that the enemy wished he never gave to me. Right.
Right. So I want to pause for a second. So Scott, you're of this performance mindset, right? How does this relate to you as the deep competitor that I know you are, right? Like, is this align with the way you think of things, or is this, or do you just need that anger and that chip on your shoulder to perform?
I don't think that those are disparate, actually. I think that they can be the same thing. I mean, when I'm listening to Joy talk, what I hear is you have the power and ability to change the narrative at any point in time that you want, right? And I'm all about that. So, you know, to use the weapon kind of analogy, like if someone's coming at me, I'm not thinking defensively. I'm thinking, how do I get that weapon from that person and go on the offensive? And my chip on the shoulder, as a competitor, like I'll make things up just like Michael Jordan. Like I'll make something up. Like Joy might drop something today about some client and I'll be like, damn it, can't believe she got that. Like I need to do better. I got to beat her. Right. I'll make it up. And I change the narrative for me in a way that takes me from a defensive kind of position to more of an offensive kind of position. And I use that to take action. And you know this, Richard, but like I'm a huge believer in shrinking the time that has elapsed between idea and action. And so that's how I'm thinking about it. It's just all about, she said perspective as well. It's all about perspective. It's all about changing the narrative, you know, well documented. So I spent 4 years in the hospital, you know, sick. Well, I could use that as an excuse, disadvantage, crutch, whatever you want to call it. But instead, I took control of the narrative and just started owning it, and, you know, started talking about it all over the place and using it as a way to bring people together and bring people towards me in a sense. And that's what I hear. So I don't feel like they're different at all. So I would be on the same page as her.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, because you can view it as a mindset that's a negative thing, or you can say, you know what, this is just my life and it's my story, and I'm going to turn it into something that's really good. And so it's all about how you handle things, how you react, right? Like you're 90% of the difference is actually not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it. And so your life is your life. Things that happen to you, but it's your responsibility to take them, turn them into your weapons, turn them into the things that create your story and help you move forward in victory and change that narrative. Yeah.
Well, let's change the topic for a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about the UK versus USA event from your perspective. I mean, we were on the men's event, you were on the women's event. We both came out victorious, which is fantastic. What was your experience like there? What did you learn from it? And maybe what surprised you?
Man, it was so fun. I felt like it took all day to like calm down afterwards, because it's so intense. There's so much happening at any time. Like it kind of looks like when you're watching that they're just sitting there taking answers in, but there's a lot of strategy involved. You know, we had group messages with our team. So, you know, I may not have talked a whole lot, but that's because we were organizing who was talking, right? We had it like ready to where it wasn't just kind of whoever had jumped in first got to say something. And so I tried to use the keyboard a little bit to where I wasn't talking over people. I wanted to be respectful of my teammates because they had good things to say too. So there was a lot going on, but it was really fun. And I needed.
What was surprising, or what happened that you didn't expect to happen?
I'm surprised we won based on stats, man.
What were some? Do you remember some of the questions? And y'all had the stats and the answers at the ready.
So what we did, do you want to know what our background secret was of how we got to know those stats?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
We had collaborated beforehand, and when we collaborated, we were like, we need to look up all the stuff that Daryl's been into and looking at over the last few months. And we went in there and like basically scoured his stuff to find out like what kind of stats is he's gonna throw at us, right? And we're in that group chat when he's giving a question, we're like stalling a little bit, waiting for like a consensus. Yeah, that's right. Put it down. Like, and we were nailing him on the head, right? So except for the one that I did.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
All we did on the guys was like, hey, let's all show up in football jerseys. Like that was our pre-meeting.
That was the sole intent of our planning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Let's come in as a team. We forgot to bring on some walk-off music though, Scott. Next time we need to, do that. What did you happen to get a chance to watch any of the men's version?
I watched that first, and that's what gave me the confidence to be like, oh yeah, I'll do it.
All right. So, and we were talking, sort of offline before we hit the record button about kind of the difference between the way we sort of walked in as the typical male trash talking thing, and the approach that you suggested was different. I'd love to get your perspective on that, because I think it's really interesting from a collaboration perspective, from a sales perspective, in terms of the things we talk about.
Yeah. So women and natural collaborators, we need people around us to help us survive, particularly in child raising, when we live still semi in a society where the man goes to work and the woman takes care of the kids and probably goes to work and runs the house and does everything else in life, right? And so there's kind of this need for collaboration. And so in this women's one, I know that half of us, we had somebody watching our kid right while we're on the show, like on the competition, and we're connecting with each other. We're making sure we're all on the same page. We had a good hour-long meeting prior to the day before. We wanted to make sure we were prepared and collaborated. And I think that's something that women tend to be good at. We want to be prepared. We want to be ready. And so it gives us the ability to come in. I think that's maybe why it was a fiercer competition, because women naturally, we literally just
whoa. Fiercer competition? You cannot be serious. You cannot.
Stop the clock.
Fiercer.
Yes.
How are you defining fiercer? How are you defining fiercer?
It had a higher energy. Like it was more intense for the watchers. People were literally messaging me saying like it was so different from the men's. Like they were amazed, like the different energy and how it felt comparatively to the men's competition. So that was
I wonder if fiercer means thought-provoking, prepared, better answers, whereas Scott, you and I see fiercer as trash talking. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of that male dominant stuff. But here's the question. So Joy, does that mean you're throwing down the gauntlet and, we're now going to have a battle of the sexes on sales?
Hey, if that's what you're into, I mean, I'd be competing against my own leader.
This sounds like a no-win situation.
Yeah. I think let's keep it to countries. Right?
When did you, just out of curiosity, what got you to the States? When did you move here?
So I moved here back in 2009, right as the economy absolutely bottomed out, which was super not fun. And then went through the process of immigration. I couldn't even work if I wanted to, because they don't let you work while you're waiting to get your green card.
But what brought you here? Was it the hopes of finding a job? Was it your family moved here?
No, I met an American. He was a professional skateboarder, and we came over here. The relationship didn't work out. Been through a lot inside of that relationship, and that's a whole nother story. Basically, he got super sick, super depressed, got end-stage renal failure, and I was his nurse for basically 6 years until I finally decided to say, you know what, I deserve better. Okay, bye. And so that was how I got here. Went through the whole visa process and everything. I'm a proud citizen now. And so, yeah.
So, I want to go back to, I want to dig a little into that. And we're not here to trash on anybody, but we've all been in situations, right, where maybe we stay too long. It could be at a job, doesn't have, it could be any kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things did you rely on as Joy to sort of say, whether you were leaving or not leaving, what kind of things, what was your grit? What was your mentality to sort of, stick with this thing, right? Because I assume you could have easily just said, screw this, I'm going home, but you didn't, right?
Right.
You could have said, you could have done that at some point. What made you just want to keep going? I think what's the drive?
So I would say God is number one for me. My relationship with him, and my mom always said it best, that I run at life and not from it. And so I think for me, that's a driver for me, that I don't give up. I just keep going. And then when I find the next best step, I take that. And for me, I learned that no matter where you go, you're going to be there, right? So you need to work on you and make sure you're the best version of yourself. And so I didn't start just like thinking about home, because I always knew if I always thought about where I was and wishing I was back home, I wouldn't actually be able to enjoy my present or my today. And so instead of looking back at what I could have done or might have done better or shouldn't have done or could have done, I just chose to look at my future and my today and said, I'm going to enjoy and be present in my present. And when I did that, it helped me survive each day, because there were definitely a ton of days that were awful and I was living at ridiculous stress levels, right? And I just did it anyway. And you just don't give up, and you just choose not to let it break you. And I look back now in such gratitude that I went through the experiences that I went through. I have a relatability to so many people that I would have never had otherwise. I remember, finally at the end, I was literally, he was so content with mediocre, right? And I think we all have companies that maybe are discontent with mediocre that we work for, right? They don't want to grow or get bigger or get better or be the best, right? And then as somebody who wants like growth and life and health, to be in that environment is suffocating. And so for me, I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna be somebody who gets burned at the stake, just because I just stayed, right? Like I'm not gonna be a martyr. And so I decided to like call it for myself and said, no, I'm gonna like pave new ways. I know that having the jobs that I had and the friends that I had, but also massive and pivotal for me. I worked in sales through the whole time, and that was honestly was an outlet for me. I had so much fun just connecting with people that were real and kind, and I made great friends as coworkers, and all of that created a new family for me, because I didn't have family present around me. My mom's in New Zealand, so it wasn't until like a few years back that I even got her an iPhone so we could FaceTime. And calling was super expensive, so it was rough. But I don't know. I guess I have an innate grit, and I know God's on my side, and I'm gonna plow forward.
I'm sitting here going, well, this sounds like her dad, which I'm sure you've had that internal discussion. Like, this sounds like, your dad when you were younger, and he didn't give up. He recognized where his strengths were. He knew where to sort of let go of certain pieces, and knew how to go forward and still continue and, sell dirt, right? Like you
Right.
literally, right? you know how to sell dirt. So you've got a lot there. By the way, will you just say the word mediocre one more time? We really liked your accent on that.
Mediocre.
Yeah. I want to put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mediocre.
Don't settle for mediocre.
I have a training question for you, Joy.
Uh-huh.
What has it been like to shift from a in-person training model to a virtual model? And what are some tips that, not people delivering the training, but people who are recipient of the training, what are some of the tips that you'd give them to get more out of virtual trainings?
Life is what you make it. So the effort you put in, you tend to get the results for. So even inside of virtual, show up, right? Show up on time, be present, get ready to take your notes, have things ready. Maybe it's a call that's a recording that you can go over, that you can, dissect a little bit with your coach to help you, focus on those tweaks that you need to make, maybe in the way that you're speaking or the tone that you're using, or, there's so many things I feel like you can do. This time of virtual training in a lot of ways is an asset for us, because we're not running about, we're not commuting constantly. We've got this time that we really get to focus on upskilling and training ourselves, to where when things are opening back up, we're so much more prepared to get out and get after it. So I think that's, to me, the biggest thing is, like, don't take it for granted and give it all you've got, because you can still make massive success even during this time. So many of our students are doing really, really well, even during this weird quarantine deal, and so it's about learning to be personable and real and not robotic. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Has it been hard to make the adjustment, or no? No. What do you think, Richard? Has it been hard to make the adjustment?
No, I think, well, from the trainer side,
From the trainer side, yeah. All right.
Yeah, from the trainer side, it has not been hard to make the adjustment for me. I'm actually in this world right now where, like, everybody's kind of saying yes, which is a little unusual, because for 6 weeks there was, there weren't even crickets for the crickets. Like, there were no crickets, right? So, so it's been an interesting place. I think what's happening is that, everybody's gone through their re-onboarding. That's what I've called it. We've re-onboarded to this work from home lifestyle. Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to do this. I think the cool thing from a training perspective is that what I used to do in a day, in 8 hours, I'm now doing like 3 or 4 days in a row for like 2 hours a day. And the stickiness is greater, right? Which is what the leadership wants, right? They're like, oh, now we can digest it and think on it and do things. And so that's a very interesting model. And I think that'll be something that sort of sticks around as this goes back to regular world. So I think that's one thing. And I think from the training, I mean, from the rep side, I think they're getting more out of it. I think they like the idea of like, hey, I can go do this for a couple of hours, but it's not my entire day, right? And I can digest this and try it and come back the next day with more questions. So I think it's an interesting model on the training side that's been really, really eye-opening and refreshing from that perspective.
I think it's good also because a lot of what a sales rep does, especially when they're prospecting, it's kind of virtual, right? Like, it's not always knocking on doors, and a lot of it is a phone call or an email or something virtually anyway. And so because we're kind of there in that space, we can help them develop that a little bit better with that understanding. So especially if they're SDR and they're just calling and dialing all day long, right? And so they're used to just kind of sitting in one spot doing their thing. And so as coaching, we can break up that monotony for them a little bit and help them do the same thing for the people they're calling, right? The whole point is that they should be breaking up the monotony for their prospects. They
totally agree.
Yeah.
So we need to sort of get to wrapping this up. This has been a fascinating conversation, by the way. I never imagined that I'd talk to someone about selling dirt. Like, I think that's fascinating, right? But thank you for joining us. And, before we go, is there something we can do to help you? Is there something you guys want to promote at the Sales Rebellion? Got a happy hour coming up, or a special, or any cause that you're supporting, or just need some advice from us?
So we have hideaways. They're free for anybody who wants to be a part of them. They're basically little hour-long sales trainings with all of us. So keep an eye out on LinkedIn for those, because they pop up regularly. I don't have one right off bat right now that I can promote, but we've got a ton of coaches that are always bringing crazy cool content. I think that as far as you guys helping me, I'm always looking for students that have the same kind of a mindset or wanting to learn and grow. And I'm there to help coach and train. And I have my team of rebels and people with amazing specialties, whether it's in process or whether it's just leaving your legacy and learning how to do that. You know, we want to help you guys and help your teams learn how to sell better. So I guess I'm just here, you know, I believe that what you put out there, it'll come back for you at some point. So I always want to bring people love and hope in life that they can live better and live happier, because happiness is an inside job. So.
Well, that's awesome. So people, I think the easiest way for people to get a hold of you is on LinkedIn, right? Or find you at thesalesrebellion.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, please be sure to give Dale a hard time and tell him that we said you did way better than he did.
That's right.
On his on his podcast episode.
We gotta make sure your episode gets more downloads than his.
Right.
Oh my gosh, he'd be so stoked though, because you know how he is, man. Like, he's the leader of all leaders. Like, he will lift everybody up before he lifts himself up all day long.
Totally agree. So thank you so much, man. We really appreciate it.
It's been so fun. Thank you guys.
Bye, Joy.
Bye.